All right, we're back at it. NBA, 30 teams, 30 minutes. Washington Wizards, 15 minutes on the clock for the Wizards. They are a very interesting team to me. I was always a fan of the Washington Wizards, a fan of Bradley Beal and John Wall. Obviously, the biggest storyline of the series season for them is how does this Russell Westbrook for John Wall trade play out? And how does the pairing of Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal play out? The Wizards, they were, to me, one of the most bereft teams of talent in the NBA last season. But under Scotty Brooks, they found a style of play that actually made sense for them. They pushed the pace, focus on scoring. They have a lot of shooting in on that team now with Bradley Beal and Thomas Bryant and Bertans, Roy Hachimura, who's going to miss the first couple of weeks of the season with an eye infection. They have a lot of interesting players. I like their draft pick of Abdia, but obviously the most interesting and most important subplot is how do Bill and Westbrook play together. I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think Westbrook gets a bad rap of being a player that a lot of, and forgive me, I have to unlock my screen here. He gets a bad rap for being a player that a lot of people don't want to play with, but he's always acquiesced to other players. You remember that season in OKC, Paul George's last season when he was an MVP candidate. He let Paul George have the keys that season. He always gave the keys to Kevin Durant. He's never been a player that has to have the shots and to shoot the ball in the last minute if there's someone else that's wanting to do it and is a better player than him. And I do think Bradley Beal is a better offensive player than him, definitely. So I don't think there's going to be a problem there at all. I think that Russell Westbrook, there's a lot of talk about articles that have come out about James Harden, about the culture that he kind of carried and permeated through the Rockets locker room, being the best player, and how he would come, a little bit later for games, and his regimen wasn't as detailed oriented as a Westbrook's. And I do think that detailed oriented regimen is something good that will help out the Wizards. They have a lot of young players. I talked about Roy Hachimura. They have Tony Brown. They have Avdia, which I'll talk about in a minute, who I really like. They have a lot of young guys, and I think he can give them some confidence and show them that there's a style of play. His teammates always love him. He always brings a lot of intensity to the team. This is a bad rebounding team. One thing that you can't say about Russell Westbrook is he's a bad rebounder. So I think he's going to have energy. He's going to be happy to be in this situation. He talked about playing his game, and a lot of people thought that was a negative thing. But if you remember before the pandemic hit, when they went to a more spread system without a big man, he dominated. He was the most efficient that he's ever been in his career. And the Washington Wizards can provide that to him without going so small, because Thomas Bryant can shoot threes, and he was shooting them in the bubble at a very high clip with a lot of volume. Roy Hachimura can shoot threes. Bertans is arguably the best shooter in the league. So, and Bradley Beal is a great shooter. You put those four guys out there and then allow Russell Westbrook to really run sped pick and roll, really dive hard at the rim. I think you cooking with gas. And then you have Bradley Beal, like I talked about. I think he's one of the most underrated players in our league. Him and Booker is definitely up there as one of the most underrated players in our league. Can score from every place on the court. You know, a lot of people have compared him to Ray Allen. I'm a fan of Ray Allen. That's one of my first NBA loves. One of my first NBA favorite players. So I wouldn't go that far, but I could see how a lot of people see he's a facsimile of him. So you put those two together in the backcourt, I think it's just dynamite. You know, no one ever complained about Wall and Bradley Beal as playoff performers, and I definitely think they're playoff teams. They always brought it, and I think that this team is very dangerous. You talk about the young wings that they have, Abdia and Roy Hachimura. I think Roy Hachimura is someone who wants it, who wants to be good, wants to be great. He's perfect for the NBA 4 world. He's like a 3.5, 4 from what I've seen of him. But we'll see if his game has grown at all. But obviously he's a big wing, and you can't have too many of those in the NBA. You have Abdia, who, let me look that up. Believe he's from Israel. And yeah, like I think I read something like he's the first Israeli-born player to be drafted that high or whatnot. But he, from what I've seen of him, his highlight clips, I don't really watch and do scouting college basketball and overseas players leading up to the draft. But what I've seen of him, he looks like a really good player. And once again, he's one of these big wings, 6'9". You have Roy Hachimura, 6'9". You have Davis Bertans, 6'10". You know, these guys have some size to them. Robin Lopez, I think the addition of him was big. He allows them to play defense. You know, with the thing with Thomas Bryant and this spread offense is that, you know, he competes, Thomas Bryant, he competes, but he's been overmatched so far on the defensive end. So if they do need to, you know, if it's a fourth quarter and there's a grinded out type of game, you know, you can bring him in a pinch. And, you know, obviously he defends, obviously he rebounds. He's a physical presence. Ish Smith, another, you know, constantly solid player. Raul Neto, constantly solid player. They have some depth there. Jerome Robinson, who is a late lottery pick. I remember the Clippers famously took him over Michael Porter Jr. So we'll see what he turns out to be. I know that a lot of people in Clippers land were really fond of him. Jerry West was really fond of him, compared him favorably to CJ McCollum. So we'll see if his game tends to grow. I always have a belief about the smaller, unathletic guards, ground-bound guards, that it takes them time to develop. They don't come in and burst onto the scene like the more athletic guards. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes off. And Troy Brown, he showed some signs in the bubble. So this is a surprisingly deep team if you look at the team. You know, Mo Wagner, you know, he was a famous Laker pick from Michigan. And I'm interested to see if he ends up being something, because I was kind of high on him in college. I thought he could fill a role in the NBA as a shooting big, with a little bit of, you know, like a poor man's version of marketing on the Bulls. That hasn't come to fruition yet, but, you know, we'll definitely see what happens with that. The next thing is just Scotty Brooks. This is reuniting him with Russell Westbrook, and he got really good play out of Russell Westbrook. You know, they had the Warriors on the ropes that final season, and it'd just be interesting to see. Or was that Donovan's team? I believe that was Donovan's actually team. You know what? I might be wrong on that. Or was that Donovan's team? That might have been Donovan's team. No, I might be wrong on that. But I know that Russell Westbrook was very, very fond of him. I know that Russell Westbrook is very loyal. He is one of the few coaches that I will say about this. There was this time when like NBA coaches were like taking sabbaticals and taking a year off and traveling and visiting teams. And Tibbs and him famously did that. And you know, he was attacked early on in his career for being too rigid, and particularly not staggering the minutes of Russell Westbrook and KD. And his retort always was, they didn't want to play apart from each other, so it's kind of hard to work it when your stars don't want to do something different. But I can definitely say this last season, showed me a side of him and an adaptability that he has, that really I didn't expect. I remember, I think this happened to the Mavericks a few seasons back, where they lost someone. I can't remember the center that they lost, but they weren't able to guard. And they said, you know what, fuck it. We're about to go all offense. And they proceeded to, you know, score the hell out of the ball. So, you know, him being able to change on the fly and to see like, you know, hey, you know, the best way for this team to stay competitive is to have this helter-skelter pace. It was really something that I enjoyed seeing. I think a lot of these coaches are too rigid. NBA coaching must be a hard job because a lot of it in NFL coaching as well, because a lot of decisions that I see these people make, they just seem like the most idiotic decisions. So there must be things that I'm not seeing, or it must be easy to read it, being away from the situation. And when you're dealing with the personalities and you have your style of play and your assistant coaches, it might be hard to step back and see and make changes, especially when if you are quote unquote a bad coach and you get other jobs. It seems like there's you know, a rotating squad of NBA coaches, and it's hard for people to break in the circle. The same coaches get jobs all the time. So if you continuously get hired, why would you even change your approach? You could just blame it on the organization and blame it on the GM. But I give him credit for changing his approach this last season. You definitely have to do that. Most impactful player for them, that's a tough one. I don't know if I would put Beal over Westbrook. I think I know what Westbrook is going to give them. I think Westbrook is going to give them closer to a facsimile of what they had last year, the way he played pre-pandemic. I think just the spacing, he's still a ferocious driver and attacker of the rim, very meticulous with his body, very regimented. A lot of the concerns that I've expressed about James Harden not aging properly, I don't think you're going to see that from Russell Westbrook. I think he's in that LeBron class of tier of player, and that's almost blasphemous to say, but I think he's in that class of player that is going to take care of his body and do everything he can to have a long, extended career. And he has a lot of naysayers still, and he always has. It seems like that is fueling his fire. So I would say they're going to go as far as their wings take them, not as Bradley Beal, Rory Hachimura, Avdia, Jerome Robinson, Tony Brown, these auxiliary players. If these players become players that take steps up this season, if they shoot the ball well, then I think the sky is the limit for them. The most intriguing player out of all their young guys that I just put in that impactful player section is Rory Hachimura. To me, Danny Avdija, I have to see him actually play in NBA games. But with Rory, I saw a path forward of the type of player that he could be in the NBA, almost like a Glenn Robinson, old school big dog Robinson, Jamal Mashburn type. Now that's blasphemy. I'm not saying he's that player, but to me, he reminded me of them. That good shooter, can beat players up with physicality and size, post up smaller players. And if that's a very interesting player to have, especially in this switch everything environment. You can, get switches on him and get easy buckets. Because, you're going to get switches in any action that involves Russell Westbrook and Beal. So I would say he's the most intriguing player. As far as their playoff predictions and regular season predictions, I'm a lot higher on the Wizards than the rest of the public. I see them as a 4 or 5 seed. I definitely see. I see them, better than Boston and potentially better than Toronto. Toronto comes into the season. It's very tough for them. They're in Tallahassee, or is it Tampa Bay or something? Yeah, I think they're in Tampa Bay. So, they're not even in their country, away from their families. There's a lot of moving parts over on that side. I do think they're a playoff team, but I just think that this team is a team on the come up, and this team, whoever they get in the first round, or if they do, I could possibly see them make it to the second round. I have locked in. Lock in the Bucks. I think they're going to be a great regular season, and the Sixers and the Nets. But if they played a series versus Miami, Miami, there's still a lot of questions if that bubble experience was valid. If they played a series versus Miami, I mean, offensively, you could say they have the best 2 players in the series. So, former MVP and Bradley Beal that you average 30. So, I don't know. I just this team. I think this team is a absolute problem. I think they are. This is probably my biggest. The Wizards and the Suns are probably my highest upside teams of this season. So I think they could be absolute problems. I would not be shocked if they're playing in the conference semis. And with injuries, I wouldn't be surprised if they made it to the conference. That's how good I think this team is going to be. People have them along. I think they're going to be a absolute nightmare to play. So that is the Washington Wizards. The season's starting here soon. We're going to get all these things out and promote them. Hit subscribe. Like I said, we're going to do every team every week. This is your appetizer for the first week. We're going to watch some games this week, but every week around Saturday and Sunday, our 30 minutes for every NBA team is going to be released and dropped. So check it out.